What's up?
What's up, man? Friend of the show. Like we have a long history, Matt. How you doing, buddy?
We do. I don't know if people can see to my left here, but my book, Football is a Numbers Game, highlights both of your guys' stories. And this is unique here because I'm on your show. You guys have done at least 100 appearances each on my shows throughout the years. So I owe you guys way more than you owe me. But I'm happy to be here. And how pumped are we about this football game, guys?
We are pumped up. We could push the book one more time though. Which chapter is the one on Sam and I? Is that which are we chapter 8? I forget which one we are.
I think so. You know, I love because you guys are my jogging podcast. So every time I go for a jog, I throw you guys in the earbuds, and I hear it come up all the time exactly how tall Sam is, which is mentioned in the book. And I can say that 5'11" does sound fair, but when he's standing next to you, Steve, it doesn't look 5'11". Right. So I had some sentence about not being very tall, not being very big in comparison to Steve. And I think for Sam, it may have ruined the entire book.
You're just part of the disinformation campaign that's out there about my height. It's right. It's true. He is the perspective problem. You put him next to me and it ruins everything. What looks like fact is no longer fact. It's like those optical illusion things, where like both boxes are gray, but when you put a line in the middle and change the gradient, it looks wrong. That's what he does. You put him next to anybody, they don't look 5'11" anymore. And that's just like he's warping basic physics.
The gradient changer. That's what they call me.
It's a terrible nickname.
Yeah, I think the problem was that I didn't do my job as a journalist and get out the yardstick.
Right. You didn't have the ruler.
Next time for this, for the sequel, maybe we'll get that. All right, man. What's going on in Vikings land? How excited are the fans? And do the Vikings have a chance here against a team that they haven't beaten in quite a while here?
Yeah, no, they definitely do have a chance. If you look at the way that they played the last time, 2-point game, back and forth, the Vikings are really one first down away from winning that game, and they were able to move the football. But the problem has been for the Vikings facing the Lions is the same issue that everyone else has facing the Lions, which is their offense is incredible. And they have so many weapons and so many different ways to beat you. And Jared Goff is just not fazed by Brian Flores. And that puts him in rare air. Every time they throw exotic pressures, they try to confuse him with all the guys at the line of scrimmage, dropping back and give him different coverage looks. He just sits in there and makes the right decision. And that's kind of ironic because where Brian Flores really put his name on the map as being a mad scientist when it comes to pressures was a game against Jared Goff and the Los Angeles Rams in 2020, where Goff had such a poor game. It was one of those that people looked back at even when they made the decision to trade Goff. Like, while he couldn't handle that type of pressure from Brian Flores, well, you could see that Goff has become a better and better quarterback through the years. And now every time he's gotten a chance to go against Flores, he seems to be able to stay patient, because sometimes it can look like there's just a tornado coming at you. Who's rushing? Where are they coming from? Who's blitzing? And yet he can sort through all that. Doesn't hurt when receivers are open and you have an offensive line that can deal with it. But what I was really impressed with the last time Goff faced the Vikings was they actually had him under pressure a number of times. He stood in there, he took hits, he found guys over the middle of the field. And if there's one weakness to the Vikings defense, when you're blitzing linebackers all the time, that does open up some spaces in the middle of the field. And this team with Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, now Jameson Williams continues to emerge. They've got guys who can get open underneath and a quarterback who can sort through it. But on the other side, they are banged up as a defense. And Kevin O'Connell has just had the answers to Aaron Glenn's defense every time that they faced them. I mean, Kirk Cousins loved going up against the Detroit Lions, put up huge stats against him. And then Sam Darnold didn't have any trouble last time. And that was against a more healthy version, especially that had Carlton Davis, which I think is the biggest loss for Detroit, because how are they going to approach facing Justin Jefferson? They have not solved Justin Jefferson basically ever, outside of maybe one game in, start of 2022 that they slowed him down. But for the most part, he has throttled the Detroit Lions. And I was listening to your previous guest predict 38-35. I mean, that just sounds right to me. It sounds like this is just going to go back and forth between two really good offenses and passing games.
The one thing that's sort of in Minnesota's favor versus last time is obviously Detroit have suffered injuries since then. Just the ever more mounting volume of injuries. I think that's clearly their potential Achilles heel. It's just they've got too many guys hurt on defense. What is Minnesota's Achilles heel in this game?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. I think it is probably, well, there's a couple of things that Detroit has done well against them over the years. I mean, one of them is just that the Vikings don't have the same caliber of running game that Detroit does. And I know that you guys have analytics backgrounds and we're supposed to talk about run games not mattering, but there is a big advantage here on Detroit's side with Jahmyr Gibbs, who has been a straight up Viking killer through the years. This Viking run defense is phenomenal. They completely took Josh Jacobs out of the game last week. They took Kenneth Walker out of the game the week before, but Detroit is just a different beast when it comes to running the football. And they had so much success with Gibbs before and throwing to him out of the backfield that's going to present a big challenge. And the Vikings on their side, they lost Christian Darrisaw earlier this year, and their run game has not recovered since. Aaron Jones has been overall great for them. He catches passes out of the backfield. He picks up blitzes. He gets tough yards, but there's not too many explosive plays coming from the Vikings run game, because even though Cam Robinson deserves a ton of credit for stepping in at left tackle and doing a good job in the passing game, he's not Christian Darrisaw in the run game. And that's impacted them. They also made a switch at right guard, and we're not quite as good in terms of run blocking there. And I think it's been a grind from that perspective. But I really think it's just that Jared Goff doesn't get shaken by them. That's probably the biggest thing, because they rely so much on turnovers on this defense, where they're number one in the league in interceptions. It's probably not going to happen against Jared Goff. They have really perfected the peanut punch that caused a lot of fumbles. They are what do you call it when a defense, what do they call it when a defense just seems to always find a way to cause turnovers? Like opportunistic. Yeah, an opportunistic defense. That's hard to be against the Detroit Lions. And that's probably the one weakness, is that they've allowed teams to stay on the field for long drives, rack up time of possession, and then they've relied on taking the ball away. But if you have a team that hardly ever turns the ball over, that could be a tough formula for the Vikings to take.
All right, man, we got to talk a little Sam Darnold here. And you are one of the few people in the world I can reminisce with and talk, mid-90s Jags. Like you're on my level, getting back to, mid-90s Jags talk. So I want to do a little throwback here. I've posed this question before we get into the specifics of Darnold. I've posed this question to the listeners and the people. Is he the best bridge quarterback of all time? Do you have any other bridge quarterbacks that come to mind historically who have done a better job than Sam Darnold? And let me preface this. Like, he was signed as a bridge quarterback, right? Like 1 year, $10 million. We're going to draft another guy. Like, nobody expected 14 wins from Sam Darnold, even after J.J. McCarthy got hurt. Nobody expected this. Is he the best bridge quarterback of all time? And how does that compare to Case Keenum, who's in that discussion?
Oh, yeah. I guess I wasn't really thinking of Case Keenum as a bridge quarterback as much as one of those pop-up quarterbacks who has one incredible season. But when I think of bridge, I think of this guy isn't really somebody who you thought was going to be that good, but you just needed a quarterback until you could get to the next quarterback, and then they surprise you. I was thinking about going back to Jake Plummer. 2003, I think, is when he had his 13-win season. The Denver Broncos go get him from the Arizona Cardinals, and if I'm not mistaken, he had something like a 30-52 record with the Arizona Cardinals, and then he goes to the Shanahan bootleg system and starts to light it up. Maybe, someone like Matt Hasselbeck in Seattle. I don't think when they got him, they were thinking franchise quarterback. It was sort of just a roll of the dice, and then he ends up taking them to a Super Bowl. How about Jeff Garcia as a bridge quarterback? I don't think that San Francisco, when they brought in a CFL quarterback who had a couple of mediocre years, that they ever expected him to win 13 games. I mean, there's bridges all over the place. And does Kurt Warner count as a bridge quarterback?
No.
Because they thought Trent Green was going to be their guy. He gets hurt. Kurt Warner, I'm sure they were thinking after he got hurt, well, maybe we can possibly make the playoffs with Kurt Warner because we have enough talent there, and they end up going to the Super Bowl. It's kind of the same story with Sam Darnold, where they figured they have enough talent around the quarterback position. This guy's got a big enough arm. They could compete for the playoffs. And that's for sure that they thought they could compete for the playoffs going into the year. But nobody inside the building, outside the building, had them at 14-2 going into this final game with a chance to win the conference.
The Kurt Warner one. So that idea came up, Kurt Warner, when I brought this up. And it's like, I'd say no with the Rams in St. Louis because it was an injury replacement.
Yes, with the Giants.
Yes, maybe with the Giants, but he wasn't actually good as a bridge quarterback. He was actually bad and had the thumb injury and fumble issues. But with Arizona, he was kind of a bridge, and he was kind of like stealing reps from Matt Leinart, and then eventually they were like, dude, you're way better than Matt Leinart, so you're going to stay in there and take us to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, you could kind of say Arizona bridge for Kurt Warner. Maybe.
When did they draft Leinart relative to Warner's coming in?
I want to say the same years,
Okay.
right? 06, they brought them both in.
Yeah.
Or maybe 07 was Warner's first year, and then by 08, they're in the Super Bowl. I mean, 07, he had the job pretty quickly. Leinart didn't last.
Oh yeah, well they were doing that ridiculous thing of the two quarterback system.
Yeah,
like Leinart was the between the 20s quarterback, I think, and then Warner was the red zone guy because Leinart kept turning it over in the red zone or whatever, or maybe it was the other way around. But they were doing that dual quarterback thing for a while, and then they were like, you know what, Kurt Warner's just a lot better than Matt Leinart. Why don't we keep him in the job?
What if he runs all plays?
Yeah.
Well, back to Darnold right now. I mean, obviously he's exceeded expectations, and I know this is I don't want to jump too much to the offseason, but of course this is the big discussion. What do the Vikings do with Sam Darnold? Does it depend on the next 2 weeks? They drafted J.J. McCarthy. They have Sam Darnold. What is your prediction as far as what they do at the quarterback position going forward?
Yeah, I think we've reached a point where they've just been way too good, and he's been way too good to say, hey, Sam, thanks for the memories. We'll catch you later. And when we talk about bridge quarterbacks, there is a Vikings historic situation that was somewhat similar when Jeff George came in and went 8-2 in 1999. And the Vikings, who had drafted Dante Culpepper, still said goodbye to Jeff George and put Culpepper in. And of course, he became one of the better quarterbacks of a 5 or 6 year stretch there. So there is some historic precedent for moving on from this guy, but I don't think it's the same situation when you get to a 27-year-old former number 3 overall pick who was always supposed to be this. I mean, if you go back and look at NFL.com, Lance Zierlein, all those write-ups that we all use for every prospect, he compares Sam Darnold to Andrew Luck, which looked comical until now o'clock. But, I mean, he's played like that. He's pushed the ball down the field. He's been a tremendous leader. He's been incredibly calm in the biggest moments for them. He's never gotten ahead of himself. He is really perfect in terms of his skill set for what Kevin O'Connell wants to do, which is push the ball down the field. If you watch on tape, you see these long developing routes, which are really antithetical for what's going on in the NFL, which is a lot of A-dots being pushed down, short passing games, high completion percentages, but you have Kevin O'Connell running dagger concepts 25 yards down the field, and guess who can stand in there and make those throws? With Sam Darnold. Also his athletic ability, the fact that he can scramble, he can make plays off script. And I think what Kevin O'Connell appreciates, aside from just the deep passing game, is that he can sometimes make a wrong call and have Sam Darnold make it right, as he did with a 52-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson against the Falcons, or the game-winning 40-yard pass to Justin Jefferson against the Seattle Seahawks. And that's another part of this too. Justin Jefferson has had another incredible season. Of course, no drama means that nobody's talked about it, but he's had this astonishingly great season with Darnold, and it's allowed O'Connell to do everything he ever wanted to do with Jefferson. And you see the creativity on a week-to-week basis to get Jefferson the ball, also to open up space for Jordan Addison, but none of it works if you don't have the guy with the cannon. And Darnold has made that work week after week. And I think the biggest thing too is that there's nothing that feels random about this. You mentioned Case Keenum. They moved on from Keenum after winning 13 games because it did feel random. The Minneapolis Miracle is a miracle for a reason, because he tossed the ball up into the secondary and Stephon Diggs came up with it and nobody tackled him. And that was the story of that season. They haven't had to limit Sam Darnold at all, and it hasn't been lucky at all. Even when you look at the turnover worthy plays that have decreased as the season has gone along, he's protected the football. He's made smart decisions. Like, this is a guy that if you didn't know who JJ McCarthy was, you'd be saying, yeah, sign me up for whatever number of more years because of this guy's physical talent, his character, the way he's handled the O'Connell offense, and he's just getting better too. I mean, look at this last game. 43 passes, 377 yards. I mean, that's franchise quarterback type of stuff. You can't win this many games and get to this point and then go, yeah, I don't know, well, just somebody else can do it. I think that we went past that probably at like 12 wins and whatever his numbers were. But I think we've just gone to the point where you can't say to JJ McCarthy, hey, buddy, just go do that. What that guy just did, who's 27, who's developed over a number of years in the NFL, just do that again with this veteran team that's in win now mode and won 14 or 15 games. Just copy that. Just do everything he did. I think that's also way too much to ask of JJ McCarthy.
So shifting focus back to this Lions game again, how important a game for Minnesota do you think it is? And I mean less in terms of, obviously, if they lose, not having the 1 seed, the difference between a week off and having to go to Tampa Bay is clearly significant. But I mean more in terms of what it says about this team's potential to win a championship, right? They're now in this world of 14 wins, battling for the 1 seed in the final week of the season. You are now there with the other 3, 4, 5 teams that we genuinely think can win a Super Bowl. If they fail against Detroit, how damaging is that?
I think that you can appreciate, Sam, when the NFL makes a rule change after something happens to the Minnesota Vikings, like the overtime with Brett Favre. I think that it's possible that Roger Goodell might reassess after having a 14-win team go on the road to play, a 10-win team, or there's some world where they're playing Atlanta and going on the road when they were the wildly better football team. It's just, whose idea was this? This is not a good system to have. We should have gotten rid of it after Seattle had that 7-win season and hosted a playoff game. But as far as the importance goes, it's massive. There's no other way to put it. I mean, if you can play at US Bank Stadium with Brian Flores' defense, it's really hard for anybody else to come in there and win, because a lot of it is based on causing confusion at the line of scrimmage. And then quarterbacks have to make adjustments and checks and communicate to try to figure out who's coming from where, how are we going to pick it up. And there's this cat and mouse game that goes on between the quarterback and between Blake Cashman, who's making the checks and calls on the Vikings defense. That's really hard to do at 120 decibels, which is, a plane taking off or a Metallica concert or whatever. It is probably the loudest venue in the entire NFL, or at least very close. And you really feel that in the opposing quarterback in a game like what Jordan Love was dealing with the other night. You can see some of the frustration, and then some of the times where they don't get their protection set correctly and you have free runners coming at the quarterback. That's a lot harder to do at Tampa Bay. Not that they're going to be a bad defense at Tampa Bay, but it's a different defense when it has to go on the road. And then another thing too is they've been extremely healthy on the defensive side. I mean, really on the entire team, but on the defensive side especially, they've been super healthy. But that also means that guys are setting their career highs in snap counts. And there's a lot of mileage on these bodies, on the players that they've really relied on, like Jonathan Grenard, Cashman, Harrison Phillips. Stephon Gilmore missed a couple games, but they've played him every play out there. And we're talking about a guy who's 35 years old, Harrison Smith. Those old guys, and I feel this every morning when I wake up now, like I could use the week off. I'm worn out from this season. I can't imagine how Harrison Smith is feeling waking up every game. And plus, the Honolulu flu thing is probably real, where going up against Detroit in Detroit and then say you have to fly to Los Angeles the next week. The Vikings already had to do that once this year and lost to the Rams. So I think that the odds of them going to the Super Bowl difference between winning and losing this game are significant. I would drop it. Let's say they have a 50-50 shot. If they win home field advantage, I'd drop that to maybe 20%. If they don't, or possibly less. It's just so hard to go on the road time and time again and continue to come out with wins.
Also specific to this game here, is there any chance Brian Flores changes the game plan? I mean, I'm just looking at some stats from our friends over at PFF. Jared Goff's stats against the blitz, and we'll unveil more of these tomorrow in our preview show. Passer ratings over 120 the last couple of years and only sacked once. PFF grade drops from 87 against the blitz, just against the Vikings, 87 against the blitz down to the 60s when they don't blitz. Is there any chance Flores completely changes it up this weekend, blitzes 20% of the time, say, instead of 50 plus?
I think that there is a chance that happens. And I think that in part because of what happened against the Green Bay Packers. All season long, Brian Flores played zone defense as much as anybody in the league. And I know the whole league is shifted more toward people playing zones because it's just hard to play one-on-one with these wide receivers and these motions and schemes and everything. But they were doing it to the extreme, as it always seems to go with Brian Flores. And if you looked at our PFF data, that was showing who had played the least amount of man coverage. It was like Shaq Griffin, it was Stephon Gilmore, and that wasn't a surprise considering where those guys are in their careers. And then against the Green Bay Packers, we look out there and wait a minute, looks like those guys are just tracking receivers. They're playing man all of a sudden. So just in this game, a huge game against the Packers, Brian Flores decides at the last minute to switch it up and play something completely different. And in that way, he really reminded me of Bill Belichick. And then that's where Brian Flores comes from. That's who his influence is. How many times did we see some sort of big game and all of a sudden Bill Belichick flips a switch and is playing a different coverage or a different scheme or different rushes than he used to totally take the other team by surprise? I wouldn't be shocked if Flores has kind of been waiting for some sort of moment to make a change against Detroit because they have had so much success going up against the Vikings. I guess my question is, will it matter how much you change it up because of their personnel? And they are just so talented at every part of that offense and their play caller that is it going to matter if you switch it up because they can run the football against you? Their screen game, teams like to throw screens against man coverage. Their screen game is just outstanding. They can really do everything. So I don't know how much we're going to get, but I know there's going to be something. I don't know if it's that, but it's going to be something that we haven't seen before that all of a sudden Brian Flores surprises us with.
Matt, how about a final prediction before we let you go? We know Tim obviously took the Lions, so I'll ask you the same thing. How much do the Vikings win by this week? You can't pick the Lions.
Clearly 6-3, just like that Seattle and Chicago game. It's going to be a slog. No, I mean, I think I would just flip the score from your earlier guest. Nice. You said 38-35. I feel the same way. I think some kicker is taking a 62-yard field goal for the logo to try to win this game. That's how every game has gone between these two teams. I mean, I think 2022 Detroit to finish a game through a pass to Penei Sewell. Now that's another part that I can't wait. What kind of trickery and tomfoolery are the Lions going to have dialed up? But yeah, I mean, I think that the way everybody else thinks this game is going to go, high scoring, whoever has the ball last, that's kind of how I think it's going to go too. I mean, that's just how these teams match up.
Well, Matt, tell everybody where they can find all your great work. And do you want to do a book reading? Do you want to read a page from the book? How do you do that? Because you always have to promote the book, of which Sam and I are a part.
Steve Palazzolo lost his job once to Jose Canseco. Was it Jose? Yeah, it was Jose Canseco.
It was Jose,
right?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a tease, right? Find out how Steve lost his job once to Jose Canseco.
Was it by being significantly worse at baseball?
It's a part of it. Certainly a part of it.
I mean, at that age, I don't know how good Jose was, but there are things that can help you.
No. I was always a better pitcher than Jose. That's for sure.
Football is a numbers game. People can read where you guys came from and many other things about what PFF does inside the walls of NFL buildings. And purpleinsider.com houses the writing and the YouTube and the podcast and all that stuff. So if people are getting jacked up for this game, I would be honored if they dropped by.
Well, Matthew, appreciate you joining us. Happy New Year, and enjoy the game this weekend.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Matt. Take it easy. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.